my gosh, you guys. Hello, happy Thursday. I have been talking for 10 minutes now, thinking that I was live, and I was not actually live. Oh my goodness. Okay, my button said go live. I clicked the button. It didn't do anything. So anyway, let me back up. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Lunchtime Live. I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps, and this is episode 74. So for those of you who are new, Lunchtime Live is basically like my video newsletter. So I'll be telling you everything about like what's been going on at Stitches and Scraps, what's coming up this week, all of that kind of stuff. As I talk about things, in the description on this video, there is a link. That link takes you to a blog post. In that blog post is a list of everything I'm planning to talk about. So as I talk about things, if you want to see them, head on over to that link and you'll see everything that I'm talking about. So that is like where you'll find all the information that I'm telling you if you want to see the link. The other thing we do in Lunchtime Live after we finish with the newsletter portion is we do a demo every week. For 2022, what I've decided to do is a stitch of the week. So I'm alternating between knit stitches and crochet stitches. This week's stitch is going to be the knit double flex stitch. Yes, that's a real stitch. So we'll talk about that more at the end, but I wanted to jump back before we get into all of this week's stuff. I want to pop back to the stitch I showed you last week, because what I said on camera and what I said in my head were two completely different things, and I told you something wrong. So this was last week's, I'm going to flip it over here. Hang on. There we go. This was last week's swatch, and this is the thermal stitch. And I told you it's very easy to count this stitch because you see these banded rows and it's very easy to just count how many rows you have, and that is true. What I forgot to say is this is a double thick fabric. You have to count how many rows you have on each side. So here, this swatch does not have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. This swatch has 10 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. So this swatch actually has 20 rows. And to show that, to illustrate that a little bit more, what I did was I went and did a few stitches on the next row in this brown color, and then I turned it over and did a few stitches back in the yellow, and look at that brown, it's completely hidden, right? It's totally on the back side. If it was the same color, you would never see that row. So you can clearly see this is two separate rows here, but you only see this row on this side and you only see this row on this side. So you have to count the rows on both sides. And that's what I meant to say. And then I just said, yeah, you just count the rows. And yeah, I missed the both sides part. So a very important correction there. So with that, let's get on to this week's stuff because I'm very excited. This week's new pattern is the first pattern in the 2022 Bag Along Cal. So if you say the whole thing, it's Bag Along, Crochet Along. I might have picked a better name, I think. But anyway, it's the 2022 Bag Along Cal. And the first pattern is this felted origami bag. So this bag, it's an origami bag, which means that it's folded, right? Because origami is folding. So this bag is actually crocheted as a rectangle, and then you fold the sides and you fold the middle in a certain way to create this shape. And then you seam the edges where it meets, and I attached a handle, which is optional. Actually, you can sew the points together and not have a handle at all, but I like it a little more open, so I attached the handle. Now I told you guys going into this that for each of the bags in the crochet along, I would have at least 2 tutorials. For this one, I'm going to have 3, which means I'm going to be updating that schedule on the main post. I haven't done it yet, but instead of 2 tutorials, I'm going to throw in 3 tutorials. The first one, the thing with this bag, the crochet is very simple. So I'm not showing you how to do the crochet because it's just half double crochet. There's a couple of increases, a couple of decreases, but nothing that you guys can't handle. What's fun about this bag is that I added in a couple of extra little finishing techniques that make it look a little more professional. So what I'm doing is the tutorials are actually about those techniques and about the seaming of the bag itself and how to assemble it. Because that's the cool part, right? You can crochet a rectangle. This is how you turn it into a bag. So the first tutorial is going to be on slip stitch surface crochet over color changes, which is a great way to make your color changes look really neat. The next tutorial will be about folding the bag and seaming it and attaching the handles, so the actual assembly of the bag. And then the final tutorial is going to again be slip stitch surface crochet, but this time it's about how to do that surface crochet over the seams. So we'll be looking at, okay, here's the surface crochet we did at the color change. What direction is it going? What color is it? Where do we start to make it match exactly? What'll it look like if we start here versus what'll it look like if we start here? How do you hold the yarn? All of that kind of stuff for making the surface crochet over the seams match the surface crochet over the color changes. So those are the 3 tutorials that will be coming out. I think I'm having one every 2 weeks, but I think the first one comes out next week. I have to double check the calendar. You know, you can check the schedule on the main crochet along post, and I will update that schedule this afternoon, late this afternoon, because I have a meeting right after this, but late this afternoon I'll update that schedule to reflect the 3 tutorials instead of the 2. So that is the bag along cal. And of course, don't forget to enter the giveaway. The giveaways on this one are not as long as they were last year. There's one giveaway for each bag, right? So this one is only January and February. As soon as February is over, the giveaway's over. In fact, I think it ends before the end of February. Check the schedule. But I think it ends a few days before the end of February. So make sure you get your entries in. This time what we're giving away is really, really cute pins and stitch markers from We Crochet. You can see all the pictures and everything on that post. Again, look at the post that's in the description here and you'll find all of this information. If you ever can't find anything, you can reach me, comment on this video, or, you know, shoot me a note on Facebook. I'm around, you guys. I'm on social media all the time. So just message me somewhere and I'll get back to you. Okay. So the other thing we've been talking about doing, as far as what's coming up, somebody suggested that I do a double knit, because I was trying to think about what to do for a knit along this year, right? The first knit along. I'm going to do a sock along later, but not yet. So somebody suggested a double knit hat. And I hemmed and hawed over it and thought about it and tossed it around for so long that it's now too late because I haven't got the yarn, and by the time I get started on it, it's going to be, you know, March or April before the hat is done, and then who wants a nice thick double knit hat? So what I'm going to do instead, it's not a cal, I'm going to just release a double knit headband pattern, like a headband or ear warmer. And I'm hoping, I'm not promising this, I'm hoping to actually get it done by next week. If not, it'll be the week after, and it will be a Valentine's Day theme. So that'll come out, and then after I get the pattern out, if I need to do tutorials to support it, I will. I probably will need to do one tutorial for how to seam the ends together. And I'll be talking more about it because there are some things I want to tell you guys about it, but I'll be talking more about it next week when I actually have a sample to show you. So that's what's coming up. Next week's demo is going to be that same thermal stitch that I showed you, but in half double crochet instead. And the reason half double crochet is fun for thermal stitch, there's the standard way to do thermal stitch, which is very much the same as what we did there. But half double crochet has that extra loop that we can play with, right? It's got that third loop. So there are all sorts of variations you can do about which loops you go into. So we can play with that a little bit and look at that next week. So that is everything I've got coming up and you know, from this past week. So I'm going to jump right into the tutorial for this week, or the demo for this week, which is Da, da, da. There we go. Okay, which is the double flex stitch. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was some commercial, and I don't even know which one. I think it was a car insurance company or something, but there was some commercial where John Stamos was showing off a scarf he made, and someone said, "Oh, that's so pretty," and he's like, "Yeah, it's nothing. It's a double flex stitch and reverse garter stitch," or something like that. So everybody was like, "Oh, that's not a real pattern." Yes, double flex stitch is a real pattern. It's a real stitch. So this is double flex stitch. Breaking this down, okay, the flex, the whole thing, think of this as a sheet of stockinette first to start with. This is a stockinette swatch, okay? And then it's got flecks of purl bumps, flecks of garter stitch in it. The reason it's called double flex stitch is because there's 2 stitches of garter stitch side by side for each of the little flecks. And you get these nice columns by alternating here between, well, actually you get the columns by having 1 stitch of just complete stockinette in between each column of flex, right? And then you get the staggered pattern by alternating where in the repeat you put the flex. So this is a 6 stitch repeat. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, okay? On some rows, we're going to put the fleck in the 2nd and 3rd stitch. And on some rows, we're going to put the fleck in the 5th and 6th stitch. And that's really all there is to it. As far as alterations for this pattern, you can widen these bands of stockinette between the flecks to get a different look. This is the most standard version that I've seen, but you could always add in extra stitches of just knit between these to space them out more and give you a different variation. You could even remove these bands of stockinette and just have the flecks right on top of each other like that. So different looks that you can do. Let's look at how to actually knit this stitch. So it's a multiple of 6, I told you, and it's a multiple of 6 plus 4 because 2 stitches out of the 6 are the fleck, so we need 4 stitches of background for each side. So the first row, all of the odd numbered rows are going to be just knit stitches. They're the right side rows, they're just knit stitches. The pattern itself is worked on the wrong side. So remember I told you this is stockinette. Well, what is stockinette? Think about stockinette. Stockinette is knit every row, yes? So we're going to, sorry, God, I'm wrong. Garter is knit every row. Stockinette is knit the front and purl the back, right? We knit on the right side, we purl on the wrong side. And then these flecks are flecks of garter stitch. What is garter stitch? That's knit every row. So where we want a fleck, when we're on the wrong side, instead of purling for stockinette, we're going to knit for garter. And that's all it is. So I've knit the first row. This is 16 stitches here. I've knit the first row of stockinette. So knitting, remember, on the right side is stockinette. Now on the wrong side, I'm going to start out as though I'm doing stockinette. So I'm going to knit the first stitch, and I'm actually going to go ahead and knit the first 4 stitches because for this row, I'm going to put the fleck in stitches 5 and 6. So there are my 4 knit stitches, okay? Now I'm going to work, gosh, guys, I'm making mistakes today. I'm working in stockinette, scratch everything I just said. I'm working in stockinette. So stockinette, you purl on the wrong side. I'm going to purl the first 4 stitches, okay, to get 4 stitches of stockinette. Purl the first 4 stitches. So remember, these purl stitches look like knits on the front, okay? So that is the nice smooth knit fabric on the front. So that is like right here, these 4 stitches, okay? Then I'm going to do 2 stitches of garter. Well, on garter, you knit on the wrong side. So I'm going to knit 2 stitches, and that's going to put the 2 purl bumps on the front, okay? So that is the 2 purl bumps right there. Then I'm going to continue that. I'm going to purl 4 stitches. Okay, then I'm going to knit 2 stitches. And then I've got 4 stitches left, so I'm going to purl the 4 stitches. Oops, getting caught in my sleeve there. Okay. So if you look very carefully, you'll see my little flex with the purl bumps there and there, okay? You'll see it better after this row because we're on a right side row right now, so we're going to just knit all of the stitches. So all of the right side rows, all of the odd numbered rows, you just knit all of the stitches. And why is that? Well, in both garter stitch and stockinette, you knit on the right side rows. So since this is a combination of garter stitch and stockinette, you're always knitting on the right side rows. Okay, see my little flex? There's one little fleck, and there's the other little fleck. Now we're going to do the offset ones. So we just did this column here. We did these ones here because we knit 4 and then we did a fleck. So now we're going to do this one. So if this is in stitch 5 and 6, this is stitch 4, right, which is nice and even, then this is stitches 3 and 2. So 2 and 3 are where we're going to put our flex. So we start with the first stitch being purl because the first stitch is stockinette, okay? Now we're going to do our garter flex. So we're going to knit 2 stitches. Now the way to make sure where you are in the pattern, all right? If you come to where you think you're supposed to knit here, suppose I was over here. Well, I look down here and I see just right below, here's 2 stitches that feel weird because they were knit, okay? So I don't want them in line with that. I want to make sure I'm not in line with that. I want to make sure that the last time I see that is at least 3 or 4 rows below me, and then I know I'm in the right place. So I'm going to knit these 2 stitches. Okay, now this was stitch 1, 2, and 3. We've got 6 stitches in our repeat, so we're going to purl those 3. Okay, and then remember we purled stitch 1, right? So we're going to purl 1 more. So it still works out to knit 2, purl 4. It's just that you started with only 1 purl instead of starting with 4 purls. So when we start with 1 purl, we're also going to end with 1 purl. So there was my knit 2. Here is my purl 4. And then I've got another knit 2. So here I've got 3 flex in this row, right? Because they're offset. And then I'm going to end with a purl 1. Okay, let's look at the front side of this again after I do the knit row, because then you'll see the flex lining up. 1, 2, and this is the knit side is the good side to count your stitches and make sure that you haven't dropped any or combined any, that kind of thing. Okay, so now if we look, you can see the first flex we did right here, okay? And you see the second flex we did right here, and you can see that they're staggered. So when we do the next row, this is the repeat. These 4 rows are the repeat. So row 1 is knit, row 2 is purl 4, knit 2, purl 4, knit 2, and then you end with a purl 4. Row 3 is knit. And then row 4 starts with a purl 1, knit 2, purl 4, knit 2, purl 4, and so on, and then you end with 1 purl. So the next row that I do would be this one again, which would be purl 4, knit 2, and so on. And that is the double flex stitch. That's all there is to it. So where would I use that stitch? I would probably, I like that stitch for a scarf. All of these knit and purl combination stitches, great for scarves. Oh, one other thing I did want to tell you about this. You want to be careful of the edges when you work this stitch. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but stockinette stitch always has floppy edges, or you have to be very, very careful not to make the edges floppy. There's all sorts of ways to do your selvages to keep them neat. My favorite one for this kind of a simple pattern, especially if I'm going to be sewing the pieces together, is to do a garter stitch selvage. So when I made this swatch, I added 1 extra stitch on each row. So I want to say this swatch was, let's see, 1, 2, 3. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 4 is 22. So this swatch I made 24 stitches wide. I put 1 extra stitch on each side, and I always knit that stitch regardless of what row I was on. So I knitted on the front, I knitted on the back. I ended up with this nice garter stitch edge, which is pretty without being totally bulky, and it keeps it nice and flat a little bit better. Helps stop the curling a little bit. And I love that for these knit purl combination, you know, basic stitch patterns. The other thing you can do is the slip stitch selvages, where you slip the first stitch, depending on, there's many different styles, but you either always knit the first stitch and slip the last stitch, or purl the first stitch and slip the last stitch, or knit the last stitch and slip the first stitch. There's a bunch of variations, but you basically only work the edge stitches on every other row, which keeps them nice and tight. So that's another option too. But you want to make sure you watch out on any square or stitch pattern that has a stockinette edge. You want to make sure that you're doing something to keep that edge neat, because you can see this one's already starting to look a little floppy. And that is the double flex stitch. And that's all I have for you guys today. Sorry, I got started a little bit late. I was literally talking at the camera for 10 minutes and nobody was there. Anyway, that is Lunchtime Live for today, and I will see you all next week when we'll talk about the half double crochet thermal stitch. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.